Hi everyone, welcome to the Community Classroom. This is Dr. Tracey McCarthy, psychologist, attorney, and educator. And as promised, I am coming back to discuss the issues related to the immigration crisis and the treatment of children in detention and children who've been separated from their parents. And so before we go any further, I want to bring your attention to there's a link that I provided, and it's a link to resources from the American Immigration Council. It's great information, great resources for anyone, regardless of what level of education a person might have regarding immigration, refugees, and asylum seeking. So it's great information, and that link is down below. Now, yesterday, there were thousands of people across the United States were encouraged to take part in demonstrations, protests, basically taking it to the streets to protest the immigration policies of the United States and the implementation of UN treaty immigration practices in the United States. Now, these protests involved outrage over separating children from parents who might have been suspected of attempting to enter the United States illegally. The protests also involved outrage over detaining juveniles who might have also been suspected of entering the United States illegally. And ultimately, the main message, which was an interesting message of the protest, was, quote, rise and resist, close quote, and basically the focus was on the abolishment of policing related to immigration, basically calling for the abolishment of what is known as ICE, or the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And so let me give you a little brief background on ICE so that you can have a little bit more information about what people were protesting. Okay, so ICE basically involves Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and what they do, or what it does, is it enforces federal laws regarding border control, customs, trade, and immigration. And ICE was created back in 2003, and it was created based upon a merger between what used to be just known as U.S. Customs Service, and a merger between that and the Immigration and Naturalization Service. And so those two entities, parts of those came together to create what is known as ICE. Now, ICE is not just located in the United States, by the way. It has 46 offices in 46 foreign countries, or offices in 46 foreign countries, I should say. Okay, and so ICE is basically the federal immigration law enforcement, to put it simply. And what it does is it identifies and arrests and removes foreign nationals who enter the U.S. either illegally or who are believed to present a danger to national security or public safety. And so anyone who is suspected of attempting to sort of circumvent or undermine the integrity of immigration laws in the United States or border control, they may find themselves under the jurisdiction of ICE. And also, ICE does provide access to legal resources for individuals who fall under the jurisdiction of ICE. Now back to the protest, the issues of the protest. At one point, the protest became so serious that a woman who immigrated from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and she's on the slide there, she scaled the Statue of Liberty in protest, and she was risking her life and caused the evacuation of the statue and the closing off of the area surrounding the Statue of Liberty. So there's apparently a very serious issue at hand. I doubt, however, that the sanctity of families, the welfare of children, or the outrage over the treatment of children in juvenile detention is the real and full catalyst for what has become a highly politicized and partisan social issue. I have three reasons for this assertion. And so you might be asking, like, why does Dr. McCarthy think this? I have never seen United States Americans this outraged about the treatment of themselves, meaning their own children, and the children and their families and communities. There are right now millions of impoverished, incarcerated, foster parented, adopted out, missing and exploited, hungry and homeless children in the United States of multiple ethnicities, for whom these same protesters have not even given a first or a second thought. I'm pretty sure of that. Not too long ago, and I'm not sure that the protesters or politicians are even aware of this, but the American Bar Association reported on the treatment of U.S. American children in detention situations. And they reported that multiple incidents of child abuse occurred in these juvenile facilities. And these situations were so outrageous. Children in these facilities, they found, and through investigation, they found that children were being forced to eat their own vomit. They were being denied adequate food. They were being beaten, thrown to the ground, made to remain in their own urine and feces. These children basically have been treated worse than those who've been detained at Guantanamo Bay. And so where is the outcry? That's what I'm asking. Where is the outcry? Where has the protest been? Where has been the scaling of the Statue of Liberty for these children? Now, I want to point out that I have been a supervisor at a detention center, and I have also worked at a non-secure detention facility. And so I'm very, very aware of what these facilities look like, the processes in these facilities, the procedures, how the children are treated, what happens to the children before they come in, while they're there, and after they leave. And so I've actually never seen a protester or anyone in outrage to this degree regarding these children. And we've had this justice system for children for over 100 years now. In some of these private residential facilities for United States children, they have even engaged in practices such as phobia inducement, trying to instill fear in the children. Children have been exposed to cold weather, meaning left out in the cold as a form of punishment. Children have been subjected to sleep deprivation, nutritional deprivation, meaning they haven't been fed or fed appropriately. They've been forced to stand or sit in stress positions. They've endured extended isolation, forced labor, denial of even being able to use the bathroom. And this is all, as a excuse for modifying or controlling behavior or maintaining order in these facilities. At any rate, let me move on here. First of all, I want to clarify something, because there has been so much outrage about the separation of children and their parents. And for someone who doesn't understand the system, this may sound like this is really, really outrageous. And how is this even happening in this day and age in America? And the fact of the matter is that this is the pattern and practice in America, and this is the pattern and practice that's been there for a very long time. This didn't just happen. It's not like people are being singled out in immigration situations and they're given treatment that's inconsistent with what happens when children are the children of parents who are involved in the justice system in the United States. So hope that wasn't too confusing. But anyway, first of all, in just about every situation imaginable in all 50 states of the United States, when a parent is arrested or they're apprehended, detained, etc., that parent is housed with similarly situated adults. And second, the children are generally never, ever transported to an adult detention facility with the parent. The children, basically as a rule, they are not sent to jail with their parents. They're not sent to detention with their parents. When parents are taken in by a member of law enforcement, the children are separated from the parents. They're given either to the custody of the other parent, the custody of a guardian, or they may be turned over to the state if those entities are not available to take care of the child at that time. And third, when they are given over to the state, the children may then be placed in a foster care situation. And that situation might either be in single home foster care, a group home, or some other similar situation. In my decades of being a child advocate, being a child psychologist and child attorney, and advocating for the best interests of children, I have never seen or heard of a single protest, a scaling of the Statue of Liberty, or any collective groundswell outrage over what is basically this standard practice for U.S. American children who are caught up in the justice system with their parents. Now, notably, these children tend to be disproportionately indigenous children, American enslavement descendants, and poor European American children. Now, while parents remain in the criminal justice system, they are not generally allowed to have their children with them in detention, jail, or prison. Now, there have been, some people might have heard of some pilot programs, some unique pilot programs where sometimes an incarcerated female may be able to keep a newborn with the incarcerated mother for a period of time to facilitate bonding and healthy infant development, as well as to assist with maternal rehabilitation. That's not the norm, however. And so that being said, for every single parent who is in the state or federal justice system in the United States, there are a large number of children who are separated from their parents for months, years, and even decades. And these children are placed in the care of the other parent, extended family members. They might be adopted out to a non-family member, placed in foster care, or sent to a children's home. Now, indeed, this is traumatic for these children, and it interferes with normal developmental processes related to the parent-child relationship. Now, the system is far from perfect, and children often get, what would be thought of as lost in the system. The system does not provide adequate oversight in many instances for many children who are separated from their parents. And children in foster care, in children's homes and adoptive homes, are historically at risk for being abused when they are placed in these non-birth and out-of-home placements. However, I have never seen a large-scale nationwide protest regarding these issues, ever. So as you can imagine, those who are remotely familiar with the standard U.S. American parent-child separation policies, they are looking at the sudden outrage and protest over parent-child separation at the border with a bit of skepticism, because the practices that I've described are those practices to which U.S. American children have historically been subjected. There has, however, never been this large outcry and media attention. And so for many, the logical question is why? Why has there never been outcry over the treatment of children who have been in these systems for years? The children have been in these systems. People know that they are in these systems. They know that children are kept in cages, so to speak. They know that the children are behind not just barbed wire fencing, but razor wire fencing. And so there has not been this collective outrage. And so many people are wondering, what is really going on? Is this outrage actually authentic, or is it serving some other purpose? Since the attention has come, however, I will say that I'm pleased as a child advocate, and the protesters are right. Children who are in cages, it's criminal. So if it's criminal for one group of children, it's criminal for all groups of children. It's not just criminal for a certain group of children who are coming into the United States. It would also be considered criminal. If that's the way we're categorizing this, it would be criminal for the children who've been laboring under these conditions all of this time in the United States. And so since that attention has, come regarding this issue, we really need to look at it. We really need to address it, since sufficient people and politicians are on Capitol Hill saying, hey, this is a problem. It's been a problem, but since they're now saying it's a problem, then the problem needs to be addressed collectively and for all children. And what I mean by this is if there is an inherent problem with separating parents and children, and such children who are separated from their parents, in this instance, are considered inherently traumatized, then the policies related to child and parent separation, those policies need to be first changed for the children who are already in the United States and who are either citizens or legal residents. No country should be making policies that provide more legal protections and more due process and more humane accommodations for children who are nationals of other countries when they have largely and egregiously failed to provide similar or greater protections for their own national children. This is common sense. Well, at least it's common sense to me and most people who are familiar with what's really going on with children in the United States. As long as the protesters limit their concerns to the treatment of a small, discrete group of vulnerable children while ignoring the same treatment, this is the exact same treatment. In fact, the treatment of children in the U.S. Is worse. And so when they are limiting their concerns to the treatment of a small, discrete group of vulnerable children while ignoring the same treatment of the larger collective of largely impoverished and underserved U.S. American children, then the so-called concerns of the protesters are going to appear to any thinking person to be perhaps manipulative, partisan, and politicizing. And it looks like that they are basically using a group of potentially vulnerable immigrant children as pawns on a chessboard. That's what it looks like. Now, to the outrageous issue of losing immigrant children separated from their parents in the system, such is an easy issue to rectify. I think this situation is being made significantly more difficult than it needs to be. No system should be losing track of any children, regardless of their status, whether they're citizens, whether they're residents, whether they are documented immigrants, undocumented immigrants. It doesn't matter. If a jurisdiction takes jurisdiction over some children, then those children need to be accounted for every step of the way. Okay, now I want to address the outrageous issue of losing immigrant children who've been separated from their parents in the system, because this seems to be an issue that has come up several times. And this is really an issue that is extremely easy to rectify. There should be no system losing any children that are under that system's jurisdiction. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about immigrant children, U.S. citizens, U.S. residents. It doesn't matter. There should be no system that takes control, care, custody, and control over a child and then lose the child. That makes absolutely no sense. I can't even imagine how, in practical terms, that even happens. However, one of the first things that needs to happen is that they need to make certain. There are three primary things here. So first, they need to make certain to identify the parents and the children through fingerprints, footprints, and photographs if the parents arrive, whether they arrive with or without identification of themselves and for their children. And so for the parents and the children, get the fingerprints. For the babies, get the footprints. Take pictures of the children independently, take pictures of the children with the siblings, take pictures with the children and their parents, so that you understand that all of these individuals are a collective entity. They are a familial unit. And so when it comes time for reunification, you make sure that you've got everybody who's in the picture back into the picture. Okay. Second, one of the things that it is very important is to make joint records. This goes along with the fingerprints. So these fingerprints and photographs go along with these joint records for the parents and children so that all records remain as one. And so you have one record, and it's the same record. It's a duplicate record for the parents and the children so that their records, their histories are constantly entangled so that they're not disentangled, so that no one gets lost in this system. Because as you can imagine, it would be very easy to have children sort of get lost in a system when their identity is not positive. Okay, and so the next thing, and I think this is really important, and maybe some controversy about this, because sometimes the children are coming to be placed with these sponsors, but I think there needs to be a process where the policy is that children who are separated, immigrant children who are separated, that they are not sent with so-called sponsors, regardless of whether the so-called sponsor is supposedly a family member or not. All children who are under the custody of the state or federal government, they need to remain in the actual physical custody of the state or federal government until such time as residency, asylum, or removal has been determined for the parent. And so the child custody by state should be maintained in the same state jurisdiction in which the parent is being detained. So there shouldn't be children moving all around the United States. So if the parent is detained in California, the children should remain in California, not sent all over the US like the families who were jettisoned out of Louisiana after Hurricane Katrina. And finally, if a parent is removed from the country with that joint record, any and all children who accompanied the parent, if it's been confirmed that this is the parent, any and all children who accompanied the parent should be removed jointly with the parent. If I'm not mistaken, President Trump has already determined that this would be the most prudent way to safeguard the family unit and to ensure the reunification of removed parents and children. But if there are doubts as to whether or not the person who's claiming to be the parent is actually the parent, then processes need to be put in place to determine paternity and maternity the same way in which such are conducted in child support and paternity situations in general. So it's not something that we're not familiar with, trying to determine whether or not this person is the actual parent. This situation is not as complicated as it is being made to seem, and the answers are very simple. Basically, if anyone even considers such, or they even care to consider such, they can see the simplicity in terms of coming up with solutions to the problems. All right, thank you for stopping by the community classroom today. Hope you're having a great summer. Hope this discussion sparks some food for thought. Don't forget about the resources, the link that I placed down below. And so I hope this sparks some thought for those who are looking for some actual practical action, and for those who are looking for some solutions, and for those who've had some questions about the authenticity of the concerns of the protesters and the protests. As always, your reflections are welcome in the comments section. Remember, knowledge is power. Take care and see you soon.